Today is the 5th anniversary of Super Mario Odyssey, one of the best games in the Nintendo Switch's lifespan. Words cannot describe how excited I was when this game was first announced back in February of 2017, and when I got it on a Friday night, my excitement was through the roof. Every moment with this game is full of surprises, excitement, and overall joy to play through. It is one of the most creative Mario games I've ever played, and that's kinda saying something when I've experienced some of Mario's most darkest moments. Since it's Super Mario Odyssey's 5th anniversary, I wanted to make a video dedicated to that, but whenever I tried to, I've always just kind of struggled to come up with an idea, either because it's already been done before, or I just don't have the ambition in me to really work on it. So after thinking for a good while, I finally found it. A concept that I haven't really used since a couple of months ago actually. That is, analyzing levels. The last time I've done this was with Tick-Tock Clock in Super Mario 64, so why don't I tackle this again but in a different game? And for this one, I wanted to tackle one of my personal favorite kingdoms in all of Mario Odyssey, Tostarena. In this video, I'm going to be discussing about why Tostarena is one of my personal favorite kingdoms in Super Mario Odyssey, and how it subverted my expectations when it comes to desert levels in video games. So without further ado, let's get started. Before we jump straight into things, I want to show you guys a little bit of a detail of mine that I've always stand by. I am not a fan of desert levels. I mean, there's nothing inherently wrong with desert levels in general, but they're always just bland and uninteresting, you know, with the sandy hills and desert temples. They're never usually the most exciting things when it comes to video games. More primarily, I'm specifically talking about the Mario series. Don't get me wrong, there are good desert levels. I mean, look at Mirage Salute from Sonic Mania. But for the majority of the time, desert levels just never really popped out, which is why desert tracks like Desert Hills or Bone Dry Dunes don't really appeal to me as much. So I've always had a hard time really appreciating desert levels because of the way they are. It's kind of the same bandana that most people have with underwater and ice worlds. I mean, yeah, they could be pretty, but they're generally just that. They're slippery or they're just annoying to traverse. And I kind of feel that in desert levels more so than any of those two combined. So yeah, my relationship with the desert stages aren't exactly the greatest. But the joy about Mario Odyssey is that they take general Mario tropes and turn them on their heads. A good example of this is actually in the Cascade Kingdom. What could have been a simple grasslands-like area turned out to be one of the most beautiful looking areas in the entirety of the game. In fact, the entire fossil aesthetic alone just makes this a lot more different than your typical, well, grassland stage. So, how does Tostarena fit itself differently? Well, let's finally delve into it. We're going to be splitting these into parts, so part 1 will be focused primarily on the story of Tostarena. Believe it or not, most kingdoms in Super Mario Odyssey focus on a bit of a story to help guide players around with the game, as well as give narrative and motivation to go ahead and beat Bowser to stop him and his wedding plans. In the Sand Kingdom's case, when you step foot out there for the very first time, Cappy mentions how cold it is despite it being a desert, so you already know that something is wrong, and it doesn't get more apparent than the ice crystals scattered around the area, which already gives out a bit of a unique narrative on itself. You don't typically see ice-themed elements in desert levels, so this is already a bit of an interesting change. We'll go over the elements of Tostarena soon enough, but focusing back on the story, Mario makes his way through the inverted pyramid, where not only is he too late to stop Bowser from taking the binding ring, but he also has to face off Harriet. So he does that. Also, can I just say that Harriet is actually one of the best bosses in Mario Odyssey? I mean, it's like no contest, she is the Ludwig of Odyssey. But getting back on topic, once you beat Harriet, the inverted pyramid starts to hover, which exposes a cave area. And once Mario enters there and goes through a bunch of the challenges that it presents, he comes face to face with Knuckle-Tuck, which mistakes Mario for taking the ring. And honestly speaking, Knuckle-Tuck is such a great boss. Like, I know Mario Odyssey's bosses aren't really hard like most Mario games, but Knuckle-Tuck is just full on creative in the way it was handled. In fact, I'd argue that it's actually better than the IROCs, and that's saying something considering that it's the main inspiration for this boss. Once you punch Knuckle in the face, you leave the entire cave, and suddenly the desert is now hot again, thus ending the Tostarena story. For what it is, it does a good job immersing players into not only chasing down after Bowser, but also uncover the mystery as to why Tostarena became so cold in the first place. It's honestly such a genius move, and I appreciate it for it. But now that we got that out of the way, let's focus on one of the best aspects about this kingdom, the way it was presented. As I said before, desert levels aren't really my favorite thing in the world, primarily because they're just general desert tropes. Desert temples, large sands that are just very empty, and there are some merits of it in the kingdom itself, you know, when it's not in the center, which is right there. So let's actually focus onto the center itself, because it's a lot more engaging than the outer parts. For the most part anyway. Right off the bat, you'll notice a small little town across that's not too far to traverse through. And once you enter through it, you hear some small little Mexican music play on your radio, and you're greeted to a bit of a Mexican-inspired town. Now, I actually really like this one, because not only does it break the entire trope of, well, desert areas being all temple and whatnot, but it actually pays some homage in respect to Mexican culture. Even the residents there are sugar skulls themselves, which honestly, they're just really adorable. I mean, look at these guys, they're just vibing. As someone who is Mexican myself, I really do appreciate it a lot. Although, I gotta say, Poncho Mario is questionable considering the origins this guy came from, so let's not think about that too much. Hey, at least we got Mario Party 2 Cowboy Mario, so that's gotta be something. Walking past through the Mexican town, you enter through a general temple area, which is actually a lot more interesting than you might expect. It still has your sand geysers and sinkholes, but it's a lot more engaging due to how it was structured. It feels like a general Mario level, but at the same time, it doesn't exactly play like one. You're just free to roam around while Goombas and Bullet Bills chase you around. And speaking of the Bullet Bills, they are essentially the main central point of this entire kingdom, as there are many to be found across central areas in Mario Odyssey. You actually see them a lot throughout the story, which gives you a slight idea as to what to do when you face off against Knuckle, which is pretty amazing. But then comes one of the best parts about it, the 8-bit sections. While the one before it is a little bit more underwhelming and it serves to really ease you into the 8-bit sections a little bit more, the spiraling tower that comes after, honestly genius. You gotta dodge bullet bills, ride on platforms, it's just amazing stuff really. But once you kind of get off of that tower and just ride through a kind of admittedly boring platform section, you head on to a different area with the Moai statues. And these guys are just honestly really funny. I mean, look at them. They're the second most primary thing you'll notice in the Sand Kingdom, and for what they're worth, they're kind of nice to have, although they will become more obtuse if you know what you're doing. But then there's the main attraction, the inverted pyramid itself. It is just wild just seeing how this thing was handled so well. It utilizes the bullet bills very well and uses the flipping gravity from Mario Galaxy's 2D sections. And your reward from exiting out of the pyramid is a beautiful sight, where you look at the town and temple underneath you. In a way, it makes you really appreciate all that the devs have done to make this kingdom so special. Even the smallest changes like the red sand instead of the usual yellow to orange is really appreciated here. But it doesn't end there. In fact, it honestly gets a little bit better when we talk about the moons. Generally speaking, the moons in the Sand Kingdom are honestly one of the best I've ever seen. I mean, of course you have the two bosses, but we gotta pay attention to the other moons that this kingdom has to offer, which are... there's certainly a lot. For the sake of this video, I won't be necessarily covering all of them, but I will point out some of the more notable ones or my personal favorites that I'd like to share. Starting with the town, there's this entire rumble section that isn't exactly most noteworthy, but what really caught my ears is honestly the music. It's a remix of the slot machine from Mario Bros. 3, but since I grew up playing New Super Mario Bros. On the DS, I associate that more with the Wanted minigame, so this honestly hits home for me on a personal level. On the opposite side of that room, you have an entire sub-area that has weird rotating buildings, which are honestly kind of wild in and of itself, but the best part about it is the way you actually play. On your first time playing, you can just take the general path by just leaving Cappy behind and do some pure Mario parkour. However, if you're very skilled at the game, you can just skip the Scarecrow and just play through the entire level with Cappy, which is honestly amazing in and of itself, but props to the devs for letting us have the creative freedom to really do what we want in these stages. There are certainly a lot to go over in the temples themselves, but the ones that I really like are the ones that rewards the player from actually exploring the entire area a bit, as well as this sinkhole that actually takes you to an entire ice cave section. I like those especially because, as I said before, they reward the player with their curiosity, and that's the thing that I really like in video games, especially in this type of genre. There are specific moons that involve the Jaxi in some sort of way that reveal some sort of lore behind his character. If you take the Jaxi to the top of the pyramid, he reminisces about a time where he was just a statue and nothing more, and if you take him to a similar looking Jaxi, he actually reminisces of his family member. You see, it's stuff like this that gives Mario Odyssey a lot more meaning than just, being a Mario game. It provides world building, which is something that I don't really see a lot after the GameCube days. In a sense, it's kind of heartwarming to see. Of course, speaking of the Jaxi, there are several Jaxi sections that I really like, especially this one where you just have to ride the Jaxi through an entire mini course, which is honestly amazing. And speaking of that, there's that one where you have to ride across the walls using the flower, and honestly honest to God, this thing took me a while to really get through, so however, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this building. This building is on the very outskirts of the Sand Kingdom, so when you enter there, you're taken to an entire section that requires you to use bullet bills, and in and of itself, it's both creative, amusing, and a bit anxiety-inducing. However, one of the best parts about it is that you can actually get off bounds. Like, literally go off bounds. There's even coins that indicate that you can do this. You see, stuff like this is rewarding. It gives us more incentive to explore around the areas that we're not meant to explore. In a way, it's honestly just amazing to experience and, find for the first time. I was certainly shocked when I discovered it myself, so it really means a lot to me when I just found this out without looking up a guide or anything else. And oh my god, the music. Dear God, guys, the music is fantastic in the Sand Kingdom. Firstly, the town itself has this really nice Mexican music playing in the background, and every time I went past it, sometimes I just kind of stop and just take in the entire scene and walk around just like as if I was a resident myself. And then of course there's the ruined part of Tostarena, which is honestly amazing. I get shivers every time I hear this song play through. And you know what? I've got to give mentions to this because I hear nobody talk about it, but I want you guys to just appreciate the ninth version of Tostarena. Just take a listen. When I first heard this after completing the game, I was kind of disappointed in myself that I really took the Jaxi because I would have appreciated this theme a lot more. In fact, if I can recall correctly, I don't think I remember hearing this one at all because I was just focused on the Jaxi of all things. So in a way, this is just one of my favorite pieces of Mario Odyssey music. I mean, of course there are other aspects about the Sand Kingdom that I really like the temple areas and the ice areas, but this one especially just hits me on a bit of a deeper level, if you know what I mean. So the music in the Sand Kingdom, absolutely amazing. It stands above the rest of all of Mario Odyssey's great music selection, so in a way, this is just my personal favorite. So after explaining all of that, one question still remains. Why is this my personal favorite kingdom in all of Mario Odyssey? Aside from the points that I brought up, like the great music, the great moon selection, a good story, and the aesthetics being amazing, there's something else about the Sand Kingdom that I really liked. This was the first kingdom I actually played. As most Mario Odyssey demos on any store provides this kingdom as your only option to play through, and for what it is, it's honestly a great way to introduce players to Mario Odyssey if they're considering getting the game. And since the demo lasts about 5 minutes or so, they have to make the most of it. When I came across this demo after being completely bummed out by not being able to play it at an event on Chicago, I was really excited to play Mario Odyssey before it even came out. and I did all I could to really rush through getting Multi-Moon before the demo was over. I was learning how Mario's movement works, I was trying to traverse through the entire areas as quickly as possible. To me, the Sand Kingdom was a perfect introduction as to what the game has to offer, and I left that GameStop feeling completely satisfied and happy that I actually got to play Mario Odyssey before it even came out. So it did satisfy my needs to play the game before it did release. So that memory has always been lingering through me ever since then, and it's one that I'll always cherish until the day I die. And with that said, I think that's all I have to say about the Sand Kingdom. While my all-time favorite kingdom is the Mushroom Kingdom, the Sand Kingdom is my personal favorite due to how much of an impact it has on me. From playing the demo to finding all of the moons by myself with hidden secrets, amazing boss fights, and an amazing set of music to accompany it, this kingdom is honestly one of the best that I've played, and not many people seem to really talk about it. I mean, that's not like no one talks about this kingdom, but most people would often talk about other kingdoms like Steam Gardens, New Donk City, even some of the smaller ones like the Bowser Kingdom. But to me, Tostarena will always hold a special place in my heart as my personal favorite kingdom in all of Mario Odyssey. And with that said, I think that concludes everything that I needed to say. Thank you guys for watching this video. I really struggled to think of a video for Mario Odyssey's anniversary, so when I finally thought about this video idea, I was really excited to cover the Sand Kingdom in its entirety. It may not be the most bombastic thing in the world, but sometimes simplicity is really the best thing you can offer. But with that said, I think I'm ready to play Mario Odyssey for the millionth time, so if you don't mind, I gotta get back to playing Odyssey. So y'all have a good day, and remember that Stu cares about you. It's time to do the Odyssey as we celebrate Mario Odyssey's 5th anniversary. Let's go!